New video tonight capturing the sound of rapid gunfire shattering the early Sunday morning silence of this quiet area of North Lakeland.
Just one after another, just pow, 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 pow.
Liberty Ulrich lives right next door and says the gunfire continued even after deputies arrived.
It's rapid fire. It's a lot of bullets and just a short time frame.
The sheriff's office in the beginning stages of their gruesome investigation. 5 people, including small children, shot in their home. 4 of them died. Investigators are working to figure out why the gunman chose this home.
We just know we had a madman with a lot of guns that shot and killed innocent people.
People were begging for their lives. Why did you shoot them? So far, detectives have identified the shooter as 33-year-old Brian Riley of Brandon. Investigators say his girlfriend of 4 years told them the retired Marine sharpshooter who served tours in Iraq and Afghanistan suffered from PTSD and depression, which got suddenly worse over the past week. He showed up at the same home on Saturday after telling investigators he got a message from God that a woman named Amber was about to commit suicide. But no Amber lives at the home.
Why there? This is not near his home. He has no relationship that we're aware of to any of them, and we can't answer that at this time.
The only survivor, an 11-year-old girl who attends nearby Lake Gibson Middle.
But he says at one point to our detectives, they beg for their lives, and I kill them anyway.
Neighbors still in shock over what happened.
It was a house just at random, and I don't know, that part's pretty scary because I'm the next driveway.
Still so many questions tonight. The sheriff told me earlier that little 11-year-old girl was rushed to the hospital. She underwent surgery for her 7 gunshot wounds.
Coverage of a deadly shooting in Lakeland. 4 people died, including a 3-month-old baby boy. A 5th victim, an 11-year-old girl, is in the hospital recovering from several gunshot wounds.
He never said, I'm going to come back, I'm going to shoot, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
But didn't kill her.
How did she survive? She said, I played dead and I prayed.
An affidavit says Riley told detectives he shot the innocent family because God told him to do it. He told detectives he didn't know the family.
He's evil. His conduct was animalistic.
Sheriff Judd says a day before, Riley showed up to the home and told family members God sent him to the home because a girl named Amber was going to commit suicide. But at that time, he didn't make any violent threats.
He confessed later and told us this snippet. You know, he made me really, really mad. So I went home and created an ops plan, and you know what that means. If you create an ops plan, you have to kill everybody.
Riley returned several hours later.
My prayers are that an event like this never happens any place in the world again.
Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd identified the suspect as 33-year-old Brian Riley. Now, normally we have a policy of not showing mugshots, but in this case, after conversations among the team, we've decided to show his mugshot because who he is integral to so much of how we ended up here. Investigators say the events leading up to the gunfire unfolded last night and came to a head early this morning. So let's give you a better understanding of where this happened. It happened on North Socrum Loop Road near Fulton Green Road. This is in unincorporated Lakeland.
At this point in the investigation, we find 0 connection between our shooter, our murderer, and our victims.
Around 4:30 Sunday morning, Sheriff Judd says law enforcement received calls of an active shooter. Those shots coming from the same house law enforcement conducted a search around the night before.
There's a truck on fire in the front yard, and there's popping sounds from the truck.
A lieutenant with the sheriff's office noticed a man outside the home wearing camo. They say he did not appear to be armed, and he ran back into the house.
There's another volley of gunshots, and they could hear a woman screaming and a baby whimpering.
They tried to enter the house, but were met with the suspect, who exchanged gunfire with law enforcement.
It's an ambush situation. Subject has armor.
Fortunately, no deputies or officers were injured. Law enforcement eventually arrested the gunman, then entered the house to find an 11-year-old victim with multiple gunshot wounds.
The 11-year-old little girl, when questioning her, made the statement that there's 3 more people in the house. I will never be able to unsee that mother with that deceased infant in her arms as they both lay there dead.
Then at another home on the property, law enforcement found a 62-year-old woman, the grandmother to the baby, also dead. Sheriff Judd says the gunman had virtually no criminal history, and this shooting appears to be totally random.
We are learning new details tonight about a former Marine who Lakeland police say shot and killed 4 people, including a baby. Brian Riley appeared before a judge and is now charged with shooting 5 people, killing 4 of them. The Polk County Sheriff's Office says early Sunday, a nearby lieutenant heard gunfire and saw Riley running in body armor toward a home in Lakeland. Riley eventually surrendered to SWAT officers who shot him 1 time. Sheriff Grady Judd said he's just trying to make sense of it all.
Deputies say is behind the crime, appeared in court. Thanks for joining us. I'm Bridget Ellison.
And I'm Kirsten O'Connor in for Justin Warmoth. A judge denied bond for 33-year-old Brian Riley this morning. The Marine is accused of shooting and killing 4 people and injuring an 11-year-old girl. Polk County deputies believe Riley didn't know his victims. But as News 6's Treasure Roberts reports, there is a strange encounter hours before the shooting.
It all happened around 4:30 Sunday morning at a home near Lakeland. But this wasn't the first time Riley showed up at the family's house.
And they go, "What do you want here?" "Well, I'm here to talk to Amber."
Developing first tonight, a horrific case out of Polk County. The accused shooter in the weekend massacre in North Lakeland has just been denied bond. Brian Riley is accused of randomly picking a home and killing 4 people, including a 3-month-old infant.
You know, investigators are just wrapping up their day after being here the entire day, trying to make sense of a senseless situation, as you said before, Kelly, mowing down 4 adults and injuring that poor 11-year-old child. Brian Riley, the accused shooter, is facing 4 counts of first-degree murder and more. Monday morning, he was denied bond in a Bartow courtroom, while in North Lakeland, neighbors of the victims were still trying to come to grips with what had happened at this home.
That's hard to understand, you know. Why that house?
Detectives say Riley didn't have a grudge against anyone in it, didn't even know them.
Very nice people. I just don't understand. I'm totally at a loss.
He's evil in the flesh. He was a rabid animal.
On Sunday morning, this home surveillance camera captured gunfire nearby. That signaled bloodshed and death. When deputies arrived, they found a vehicle that had been set on fire and the former U.S. Marine inside, wearing armor and wielding a gun. After a volley of gunfire back and forth, he gave up. Riley's also accused of shooting an 11-year-old girl up to 7 times.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
The night before the massacre, Riley came to this house for the first time, saying that God had spoken to him directly, asking for a girl named Amber, who no one here had ever heard of. Eventually, he left. They thought for good.
But he does tell us that the gunman showed up at this house behind us here. This was last night around 7:30, and he was claiming that God sent him here to speak with someone who lived in that house. The woman who answered the door sent him away and called police, and again, that was around 7:30 last night. Then this morning around 4:30, law enforcement arrived back at the same house after hearing reports of gunshots. They arrived and found, fortunately, no deputies or officers were injured in that exchange, and law enforcement placed the gunman under arrest.
Now we're hailing into the house, and we find out there's an 11-year-old female victim who is calling back to us. She's significantly injured, and Sergeant Graham, once again another hero that was there that night, rushed into the house and rescued the 11-year-old who had multiple gunshot wounds.
That 11-year-old victim informed law enforcement there were 3 other dead bodies in the house. Sheriff Judd says they include a 40-year-old man, a 33-year-old woman, and a 3-month-old baby. They also found a 4th body in a separate home on the same property. That was a 62-year-old woman. Now, Sheriff Judd identified the gunman as 33-year-old Brian Riley. He says he has virtually no criminal history, and he's a former veteran, serving around 7 years total in both Iraq and Afghanistan.
And this is all as investigators try to learn more about what led up to this crime. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd tells us Brian Riley, 33 years old, described himself as a survivalist, telling deputies, "You know why I did this." Riley is a veteran, a Marine, we're told, who was deployed to Iraq in 2008 and in Afghanistan in 2009-2010. Now, the Polk County Sheriff's Office says Riley's girlfriend of 4 years told deputies he has PTSD and that she has seen him depressed but not violent. We're told that he worked providing security to a church in Orlando last week. And when he got back, the girlfriend shared he mentioned that God spoke to him and he can talk directly to God. Still, Sheriff Judd said Riley's girlfriend said that he was not violent. And it's important to note Riley, according to law enforcement, has virtually no criminal history. Sheriff Judd saying we're not dealing with a traditional criminal here. We spoke with a neighbor who says he heard about the shooting earlier today online, but had no way of knowing until now the suspect lives right across the street.
To tell me this kid is over there doing a shooting is, I can't believe it, really. I just can't believe it, you know. Knowing his mother, and I've seen his father a couple of times, very nice people.
Mass murder, this one in Lakeland, Florida, where 4 people are dead. An infant is among the victims. The gunman who also shot and wounded an 11-year-old girl surrendered after he was shot at least once during 2 gunfights with deputies.
At least dozens, if not hundreds of rounds fired this morning between our suspect and our deputies who were directing fire back at him to try to stop him from shooting at us.
The sheriff says while the gunman was being treated at a hospital emergency room, he tried to grab a police officer's gun and had to be medicated and restrained. Officials right now are unsure of what prompted this rampage. And here's a look at the suspect. He's been identified as 33-year-old Brian James Riley. Investigators say he is a former Marine who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. His girlfriend says he has PTSD. She says he was occasionally depressed but never violent.
It all happened in Lakeland just before 4:30 a.m. when a Polk County Sheriff's Lieutenant heard automatic gunfire rip through the early morning silence from a neighborhood just 2 miles away. And Riley has admitted to taking meth.
Yeah, it's such a bizarre case, and no one expected a mass shooting on a Sunday morning in rural Polk County, but that's exactly what they got. And the sheriff says when this call came out, every available deputy and Lakeland police officer rushed to the scene.
Why there? This is not near his home. He has no relationship that we're aware of to any of them, and we can't answer that at this time.
When deputies arrived, they heard rapid gunfire and screaming coming from the home. Sheriff Judd says Riley opened fire on responding law enforcement, but eventually surrendered peacefully. Deputies entered the home to find a badly wounded 11-year-old girl and 4 other people shot and killed.
And kill the baby and shoot the family dog.
The sheriff says these people were begging for their lives. Why did you shoot them? Riley had nothing to say as he was being transported to the Polk County Jail. Sheriff Judd calling this one of the worst cases he's seen in his law enforcement career.
Crime's never been this low. You've never been as safe as you are right now. But when you get a nut job like this, statistical data makes no difference. I mean, this guy was wired up on dope, on meth.
The neighbors in this area tell me this never happens. Many woke up last night to the sounds of gunfire.
This is a horrific incident. Our community and many families are hurting this morning.
The assistant chief for Lakeland Police stepped up as the chief is currently quarantined with COVID-19.
We had several officers that helped the sheriff, deputies that were here.
Sheriff Judd said the suspect took the easy way out when he surrendered unarmed to law enforcement.
But Sheriff Judd does say there's another sad element to this case. He mentioned it briefly earlier, saying that the family's dog was also killed in this attack. The dog's name, DOG. Now, there's a connection to the sheriff's department here. In 2006, Polk K-9 officer Matt Williams and his partner, also named DOG, were shot and killed by a man who ran away from a traffic stop.
Riley admitted to taking meth. A judge ordered he be held without bond.
Developing tonight, a judge is keeping a man in jail after he's accused of murdering 4 people in Lakeland.
A judge denied bond for Brian Riley in court this morning. He is a former Marine who described himself as a survivalist and said he was high on meth. Detectives say they found no connection between the shooter and the victims, and the killings were random. The man accused of shooting and killing 4 people, including a mother and baby, mostly silent in a Polk County courtroom. 33-year-old Brian Riley only replying when asked about an attorney.
Yes, I just don't know who exactly yet.
Investigators took Riley into custody Sunday.
The sheriff says these people were begging for their lives.
He is facing a list of charges, including first-degree murder, after deputies say he shot and killed 4 people in their Lakeland home Sunday morning.
They don't even make movies like this because that's just past what you can wrap your head around to senselessly harm a child.
If he'd given us the opportunity, we'd have shot him up a lot, but he didn't because he was a coward.
And according to the arrest reports, when asked why he did this, Riley told deputies, quote, "Because I'm a sick guy, I want to confess to all of it and be sent to jail."
They say Riley is a retired Marine and designated sharpshooter who was heavily armed and wearing body armor. The Polk County Sheriff says Riley went to the home on North Socrum Loop Road at 7:30 Saturday night, saying that God sent him to stop a woman from committing suicide. When deputies were called, Riley took off to his home in Brandon before returning to the victim's home at 4:30 Sunday morning. Deputies say Riley barricaded the door and shot those inside the home before turning the gun on deputies. Thankfully, no deputies were seriously injured. Riley was shot, but eventually surrendered with his hands up and is expected to survive.
He came out with his hands up, and that's why there was no further gunfire. It would have been nice if he'd come out with a gun, and then we'd have been able to read a newspaper through him, and we'd have had a different conversation here this morning, because he was a coward. You see, it's easy to shoot innocent children and babies and people in the middle of the night when you got the gun and they don't. And I've seen a lot of tragedy and a lot of sadness. And there's things you can't unsee.
He told the family God had sent him there because someone named Amber, who lived there, was going to commit suicide, but no one named Amber lived at the home. The family told Riley they were going to call the police, and he left. He returned just before 4:30 a.m. when he started shooting inside the home with multiple guns. He was arrested and taken to the hospital, where investigators say he tried to grab an officer's gun before he was tied down and sedated. According to Sheriff Judd, 33-year-old Riley was a Marine for 4 years before he was honorably discharged. He was currently working as a security guard. He spent 3 years in the reserves and did tours in Iraq and Afghanistan as a sharpshooter. Investigators say Riley was a, quote, survivalist who was wearing body armor at the scene. They say his truck had first aid kits inside, and he had admitted to taking meth.
Polk County Sheriff says there are no good answers as to why a decorated veteran would become a mass murderer, accused of taking the lives of 4 innocent strangers, including an infant.
Leaders are urging people to be patient as they process the entire scene, saying it can take additional days to fully analyze the incident. Polk County Sheriff says this was a horrific incident that has left his community traumatized.
There's no Amber here.
After being threatened with police, deputies say Riley left, but came back early Sunday morning. That's when deputies say they rushed to the area where they found Riley's car on fire and glow sticks surrounding the area. Officials say Riley, wearing camouflage and body armor, was waiting to ambush and exchanged gunfire with deputies until he ran back into the home.
And then we tried to enter, and that's when we had the one of our volleys of gunfights with him, and apparently shot him on that particular occasion.
Riley then gave himself up, but according to Sheriff Judd, Riley only suffered minor injuries due to him wearing body armor.
It's important to underscore, just because you have mental health problems does not mean you're not criminally liable. He's criminally liable. He played word games with us during the interviews to try to set a defense. That doesn't work.
Investigators now say accused murderer Brian Riley did more planning than originally thought. They say the former Marine drove to the neighborhood the night before asking about somebody named Amber. Nobody by that name lives there. Detectives say neighbors grew increasingly worried about the stranger's erratic behavior. A grandmother told him to leave or she was calling police. A man on a lawnmower exchanged words with him. Riley left, but Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd says he began plotting to kill both of them and the rest of their family. Malik Rankin has been following the shooting since it happened. Authorities tell her the gunman had an ops plan.
Today, Sheriff Grady Judd shared more information on what the suspected gunman, Brian Riley, said following his arrest. Judd said Riley called these murders his ops plan.
This was planned. It was calculated. He anticipated what he was going to do.
Sheriff Judd gave new information on the 62-year-old grandmother that was killed.
As he went into the grandmother's apartment or home behind the main house first, He shot his way into that house. He shot the front door. He shot through the windows. And finally, he got in through the side door.
Judd says this is when he believes Riley moved into the main house and killed 40-year-old Justice Gleason, his wife, and their 3-month-old baby. The lone survivor, a quick-thinking 11-year-old.
She told our detectives, she said, I believe the reason I'm alive now is I played dead and I prayed.
An outrageous crime. This guy was totally off his rocker. It needs to have the full weight of the law brought down.
This is one reason why he says he's pushing to get more resources for local law enforcement offices. While in Polk County, he announced several proposed incentives to increase recruitment. First, new law enforcement officers would be given a $5,000 signing bonus. This includes officers new to the industry and officers who moved to Florida. Second, getting rid of potential roadblocks for those officers coming to the state. A free certification exam will be given, and any training programs will be covered up to $1,000. And third, a scholarship program will be made to cover the costs of the Law Enforcement Academy. All of this will still need to be approved by the legislature before they go into effect.
Is there anything you'd want to say for the Lakeland police officers that did respond to that quadruple murder, really a horrific weekend in this area?
Yeah, I think that was Grady's folks. I think there was a lot of deputies involved in that, sheriffs, and here, this is an outrageous crime. This guy was totally off his rocker. It needs to have the full weight of the law brought down. When you have something like that happening, what do? These are the folks that you call upon, and they're there for you time and time again. And so, we've seen this time and again. When we were in Surfside, within minutes, you had first responders showing they're digging in the rubble. They're going and rescuing people, knowing that the rest of that building could collapse. Of course, I mentioned September 11th. So these are folks who, they're the ones that have to be at the tip of the spear when anything happens in society that's dangerous and that endangers the community. And I think the least we can do is let them know that we support them.